Hello, friends. This is Darren Hayes of Pigskin.com. Before we take you to your favorite Sports History Network show, just want to tell you a little bit about some merch that you can pick up that represents your favorite SHN podcast. So far, there's t-shirts, coffee mugs, and even books from some of the authors that do podcasts right here on SHN. Who could buy something better than that, than have the history right from the gentleman that you hear talking about it? But we also are adding things each and every day. And where's that store, may you ask? Well, it's at SportsHistoryNetwork.com. Up at the top, there is the SHN merch button. Click on that. It'll take you right to the store, and you can be representing your favorite podcast and show the world that, hey, on the swag that I'm using, it's the headquarters of sports yesteryear, Sports History Network, and my favorite podcaster, the Sports History Network store. Shop there today. In this episode, Timothy Brown of Football Archaeology joins us again this week to educate us on another aspect of football history. This week, we chat about the high-scoring squad of Coe College way back in 1914. Tim's got all the details coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at SportsHistoryNetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And we're going to stare through that portal today and go back into some football archaeology because it's Tuesday, and we have our friend Timothy Brown from FootballArchaeology.com. Tim Brown, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Hey, Darren. Good to see you once again. Looking forward to talking about Coe College.
Yeah, Coe College. And I wasn't aware of this, that there was another point-a-minute team. You had a great post on September 17th about that. You know, when I think about point-a-minute teams, you know, of course, the famous Michigan teams from the early 20th century come to mind under Fielding H. Yost. And I did not realize there was another one called a point-a-minute team.
Yeah, so you know, if listeners aren't aware, Coe College is a small liberal arts college in Iowa, and you know they were certainly aware, or at least the reporters were certainly aware of Fielding Yost's point-a-minute team that at Michigan, and so you know part of what I did in the article is just point out that they didn't score a point a minute. They were they were under it, but they scored a lot of points. You know. And so this Coe College team ends up, you know, in having kind of a similar season. They were just scoring all kinds of points. You know, they played other small colleges in Iowa, and they played one game in Illinois. They also played their second game of the season was against Iowa State, who they lost to, but you know, they seem to have played respectably against them. So they, you know, they kind of did their non-conference season, and then during conference, they just started playing teams that they just were kind of blowing them out of the water. I mean, they won one game, it's like 121-0, or you know, some silly thing like that. But you know, so they just ended up, you know, just having a phenomenal year, and so then they started being touted as the point-a-minute team, you know, obviously copying Michigan. But it's just kind of a, you know, it's a team that basically few people are aware of or care about. You know, that's kind of the life of small college football. But, you know, I love being able to bring those in, you know, here and there where there's something interesting, something compelling about a team like Coe, you know. I happen to, you know, one of the things that I use as illustrations for the blog and for my books as well as I collect old, you know, football related postcards. And so sometime back I had acquired one with Coe College, you know, of this Coe College season, and then I never really had looked into it very much. And once I said, this might be something worthwhile, you know, for a tidbit. and I got it, started looking into it, and there's this whole story about the point a minute, and two of the teams that they beat that year, the colleges no longer exist. One merged with Co. So they had this kind of incestuous thing going on with some of the Iowa schools. But anyway, it's just I think just kind of a fun story about a team that kind of came out of nowhere and just was kicking everybody's butt, which is, always fun.
But that's the sweet spot of your tidbits. These things that many of us that are in the football know are not aware of, and you bring it back to the forefront and make us aware of it and preserving the football history. And that's the magic of what you do with football archaeology. And we really appreciate that. And, especially sharing somebody like College that probably most of us have never heard of.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your comments, but yeah, I just think it's, it's just interesting to see kind of how they did things back then. And again, it's just the whole evolution of the game. It's just, there were bits, there were spurts at times, but a lot of it's just really slow progression. And then, the game casts certain elements aside. We don't need this anymore. And, we end up with the game we have today, which is, as far as I'm concerned, especially offensively, it's the most exciting game we've ever had, right? There's just so many different options, so many different things that teams can do now. Back then, not so much the case. It was, pretty much run it up the gut football. Some teams did some other things in passing, but a lot of it was pretty old school.
Yeah, well, just sure glad that you're sharing that with us and collecting those things and recording them for everybody to enjoy. So now, if listeners, if you would like to be aware of what Tim's coming up with, some of these antiquated items from football or teams that are no longer exist or maybe had their day in the sun and it's no more, Tim is going to share with us right now how you can find him and find his tidbits and subscribe.
Yeah, so my site is footballarchaeology.com. It's a Substack site. So if you happen to be a Substack user, then you can find it through that mechanism as well. But just footballarchaeology.com. I post everything that's on the site. I post it on Twitter as well. But the advantage of subscribing is that you'll then get a newsletter. Everything that I post becomes an email sent to your inbox on essentially a nightly basis, 7:00 Eastern. And then the long form articles kind of come out in a little bit more random order. But that's way to find me. If you enjoy it, great. Whichever way you want to access it, have at it.
All right. Tim, thank you very much for sharing the footballarchaeology.com items with us. And we'll talk to you again next week.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Darren.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Jean Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.